And Daniel, before you start recording.
Sorry, guys. I was just trying to unmute myself.
No problem. All right.
I'm doing 3 things at once.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I think Holly would be the best person to speak in this instance. I'm just spying on you all.
Yes, and we see that she's here now. So we're good to go. Good to go. Record.
Perfect. All right. Well, welcome to today's Feed Your Mind session, sponsored by MediaCom. And so since we're talking about MediaCom and flipping a coin or thumb wrestling about who's going to speak, Holly, would you like to say a few words about MediaCom business?
Good morning, everyone. It's good to see some familiar faces and some new ones that have joined. Definitely, here MediaCom Business is still here to help anyone and everyone who needs to do any services such as the internet, phone, video, whatever the case may be. And not to forget, if anyone has missed the commercial, we now have launched the whole 10G home. If anyone's seen that commercial, coming out of Ames, as a matter of fact, we can hook up to 80 devices in one home, including, I thought some really cool, like it was a smart coffee pot or a smart dog actually that was able to run around and do their thing. On top of, like I said, over 80 devices can hook up to this phone. So we have gone far and beyond to completely make sure our infrastructure is strong to support homes like that. And so if anyone has any questions in regards to upgrading any services that they currently have or getting services, please feel free to let me know. And an additional reminder that I offer some promos that the call center cannot. So I will share my information again on the chat, and it's also on Fuse News. So if you have any further, what was that, Trish?
Oh, I just have a question. 80
Sure.
devices? Do homes really have 80
Yes.
devices?
You can have 80 devices, especially now in the techno era that we live in now.
So for instance, so we had switched to MediaCom a couple months ago. So when I think of devices, I think of our laptop and our phones. So what other, you mentioned coffee pots? I can make my coffee pots.
There's appliances, refrigerator, refrigerators. There's going to be stoves. There's going to be coffee pots. You can actually turn on remotely from your cell phone. So away from, so they can be like Bluetooth, for instance, or you can set that, yes, all kinds of home devices that actually work off of the internet now.
Oh yeah. I have like my thermostat and my garage door hooked up to my cell phone, so I can, change the temp from 500 miles away if I want to. It's pretty awesome.
Yes.
Oh, you're kidding. And so we will need stronger internet for that. I mean, to be
that available now.
For bandwidth, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like we need to go shopping for some smart stuff. Awesome.
Oh,
Awesome.
wonderful. Thank you, Holly.
If you want to get us that video, Holly, and maybe next time we can play it, that would be great.
Absolutely.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, and to other sponsors as well. Thank you, Eric, for helping line up our speakers for Feed Your Mind here. And that's been very helpful. And we have had some wonderful topics. Today, another great on board, and Nicole Starling is going to be presenting. Nicole is a corporate marketing leader and motivational speaker. She speaks on self-care, self-discovery, and self-love. And I know that today's topic is going to be of interest to, and as we're all dealing with stress and trying to figure out how do we take care of ourselves while we're still juggling priorities. Additionally, Nicole is also a hashtag boy mom. She loves cooking and dancing simultaneously, which I'm sure leads to some interesting things in the kitchen. And she also enjoys being with nature, and so those are some of. So Nicole, you have a lot of things to share with us today.
I do. Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you all for having me here this morning. Let me go ahead and share my screen. We'll just get us started. And here we go. Can everybody see my screen okay? Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. All right. Well, I think we've already had a great introduction. Thank you, Daniel. My name is Nicole Starling, and I am a sales and marketing executive for Coty, which is a global beauty company. I am a speaker, a wife, a hashtag boy mom, and I am also a type A achiever. So today we will talk about how to take your power back, and re-energize and refuel yourself, especially in a world that is obsessed with productivity and efficiency and always being on. Before we get started here, I just want to do a quick housekeeping. I am informal, so please, if you want to chime in, just take yourself off mute and join the conversation. This is meant to be engaging. I do have my phone here up with the chat, so if you don't want to speak but you have a question and you want to put it in the chat, totally fine. I know that Daniel's going to help me monitor the chat as well. And then just a disclaimer, because we are talking about today stress and being overwhelmed. And I just want to make sure everybody knows I am not a certified therapist or psychologist. If you are ever feeling overwhelmed, consistently overwhelmed and anxious or depressed, please contact a professional. It's really important. You deserve that type of care, and you deserve to feel whole, and help is available. So I just wanted to put that out there. It is, I know, Mental Awareness Week as well, and so it's really important that we tap into professionals when we need them. All right, to start out here today, I want to take us back 5 years to 2015. Which honestly feels like more than a decade ago with everything going on right now. 2015, so Barack Obama was still president. We could still have coffee face to face. I don't think any of us had ever worn face masks before. I looked it up just for fun, and the top movie in 2015 was Jurassic World, which I had not seen before. I still haven't seen. That was a top grossing film. And then Uptown Funk by Bruno Mars was the song. So I think we can all, jive with that song. So my life in 2015, it looked a lot different. My husband and I were living in Los Angeles, California. After graduating from the University of Iowa, I worked in Des Moines for 5 years, some with Ryan, so good to see a friendly face. Then I went back to get my master's, and my goal was to work in this world of beauty. I wanted to combine my love for business with this glamorous world of beauty. And I was lucky enough to get recruited after graduate school by Procter & Gamble and started working for brands like CoverGirl, Max Factor, Wella, Sebastian, just to name a few. At the time, in spring of 2015, I was working as a marketing director. I was a brand manager, and I was my husband and I, we had 2 kids, a 3-year-old and an almost 1-year-old. And honestly, from the outside looking in, our life looked pretty sweet, pretty glamorous for the most part. But it wasn't really like that in real life. One morning, I was taking a drive down to the south part of LA for a business meeting. And on my drive down, my arms started to feel numb. And then my legs started to feel numb, which is really not what you want to have happen when you're driving, right? That's super dangerous. But me, with my type A personality, I was like, you know what? It's probably just carpal tunnel. My mom has carpal tunnel. I've got to get to this meeting. So I completely ignored it, like I ignored a lot of things. Well, on the way home from my business meeting, I was taking the 405 freeway, which is a 12 to 14 lane freeway in Los Angeles it's absolute torture, like all the time. So there I was driving in rush hour traffic, the sun had set. It was, you know, it was bumper to bumper. All I could see was red lights blazing back at me. And all of a sudden, my arms started to go asleep again. And so I was like, okay, I'll just rub them again. It's probably just this carpal tunnel thing. And then my legs started to go to sleep. And suddenly I got this really loud ringing noise in my ear, so loud that it felt absolutely debilitating. And then I started getting tunnel vision. It felt like it was like a, you know, like a horse with blinders on. I couldn't see anything to the left or right of me. So here I am on the busiest freeway in Los Angeles, and I'm pretty much hearing and seeing impaired. I don't know how I did it still to this day, but somehow I managed to pull over on Sunset Boulevard. I called 911 and the paramedics come, they take me to the emergency room. And that's when I hear it for the first time. The doctor comes back, and I'm sure at this point that I've had like a heart attack or a stroke or something like that. But they come back and they say, no, ma'am, we think you've had a panic attack. And now I'm like, okay, I'm super embarrassed. I'm in shock. Are you kidding me? I am the type A, I can do it all, right? I can be a super mom. I can be a super boss, a super wife. I got this covered. But obviously, I did not have it covered. I was going so hard and so fast, married to achievement, and really wanting to be the best at all times, that I was physically, emotionally, and mentally exhausted. And I realized at that point that something had to change. So I started really at that point working with my doctor and working with professionals to get my life back on track here. But as I looked more and more into self-care and to burnout, what I discovered is that I am not alone in feeling burnt out. It's really, I hate to say the word epidemic because we're in a pandemic and that feels very strange, but we have a culture of burnout. According to a Gallup poll that was taken earlier this year, even before COVID-19, 76% of employees experience burnout at least sometimes. And 28% came back and said that they were always or very often feeling burnt out. So if you think about it, even us here, on the phone together today, 3 out of 4 of us at least feel that overwhelming stress and burnout some of the time. And 1 out of every 4 of us is clinically burnt out. Now with COVID-19, I'm sure you can all attest, that has exacerbated every single facet of our life. So I want to take a pause there and just ask you guys, turn kind of the mic over to you guys. Have you ever felt burnt out? And if you do, feel kind of like that overwhelmingness or stress, what does it feel like to you? Describe to me what that feels like.
Well, I can speak to that. My body will tell me. It'll either be my lip will start moving or my eye will twitch. And I know, and physically that I am ready to be burnt out.
Yes. Anybody else?
I got a new one that about a year ago, I had some work done on my teeth. I got a crown replaced and it kept hurting. And then I started to realize that the times that I'm most stressed, that tooth starts hurting. It's like this little signal. And my dentist said it's because I'm grinding my teeth at night.
Oh.
So when my tooth hurts, I start to realize, I think I'm starting to get burned out.
Wow. I carry my stress right here. I work a lot on the computer, so I tend to stop breathing you know, do that kind of like that shallow breath, and I'll hold my shoulders up here. And so when I used to get massages, oh, bring back the day, please. But when I used to get massages, they'd be like, you are like, just, we can't even get through this right here, right? Because I held it all right here. But some people hold it, you know, in their teeth, in their eyes, in the pit of their stomach. But there are physical cues that our body will give us to say, you need to slow down. This is too much. Just got a chat here from Rachel, feeling tension in my back, and then also just exhaustion and tiredness, right? You don't have the energy. You just feel everything takes twice as long or more to actually accomplish.
Yeah, like Eric, I became a teeth grinder back in May, so that was kind of fun.
Yeah, these things that happen to us, and you're like, what is that?
I know. Yeah.
But it's our body saying, stop, we need to take a break. We need to refuel ourselves. And those are, the more that you are in tune with those cues, the faster that you can start responding and not get it to a point where it's overwhelming you or, you know, burnout breakdown like I experienced. So let's talk real quick, because I'm glad that everybody's feeling like they have those cues. Sorry, one quick minute. Anxiety and burnout are a constant struggle for people in my industry, says Annie. We live on social media for work, so it's hard to disconnect. Yes, absolutely right. I mean, sometimes I'll go to bed and I think about like all of these tabs or all of, you know, scrolling, and it's these images that are burned into our brain, and our brain cannot rest. We cannot just de-stress from that, right? Thank you, Ryan. I know you have to run. Thanks for attending this morning. So let's talk a little bit about the cause of stress and burnout. I would love to understand what you guys think are kind of the root causes of burnout and stress. There's no right or wrong answer.
Expectations.
Go ahead.
Expectations.
Yes, those shoulds, right?
And very unrealistic ones.
Right, yep.
Not saying.
What's that, Daniel?
Not saying no.
Not saying no. Boundaries, right? Not setting your boundaries. Exactly. What about, does anybody feel like it's just like, does anybody catch themselves saying there's just not enough time in the day, right? You've got so many competing priorities and you just don't have enough minutes in the day. So that was one where, and by the way, all of these are right. I mean, it's society, it's you know, job, it's work, it's finances, it's relationship, it's rules, it's expectations, it's the shoulds of our lives that just feel like it's just piling on us, you know, like we're in football and we're being, you know, tackled just on top of us all the time. I did want to share with you, because I found this really enlightening as I started to really double click on some of the causes of our burnout culture. And one of the fallacies that we have out there is that we don't have enough time. So what I mean by that is, post-industrial revolution, we actually have more time than we've ever had before. Machines were introduced into our lives and automation was introduced into our lives to give time back. However, what did we do with that? I can tell you what we did with that. Actually, I think it was MediaCom, you talked about at the beginning, right? What do we do with our time? We multitask. We have computers, TVs, iPads, iPhones, right? We are constantly on, and we are taking the minutes of free time that innovation of and automation of the Industrial Revolution passed to us, and we are volunteering to give that back because we constantly are multitasking predominantly with technology. Another fun fact that I found really interesting, and there's actually books written about this whole like theory of the fallacy of time, but also all of the terminology and the culture that the Industrial Revolution gave us. Things like efficiency, things like productivity, right? Where efficiency is doing something the right way, where it has the least amount of waste possible, right? So it's being able to, you know, make a lipstick on an assembly line without having waste, right? As somebody who is in business, all of you can attest that we want to create output with having the least amount of waste possible. Same thing with productivity, right? And I know, Jill, you can attest to this, but more chicken nuggets off the machine. Let's go, let's go. Less inputs, more outputs, more chicken nuggets. But you guys, we're not machines. I hate to break it to you. We're not machines. And by the way, even machines have some rest time as well, and some, you know, recharging and some upgrades at times. But all of these concepts, I mean, how many times do you guys catch yourself on a Saturday or a Sunday saying, man, I've been so unproductive today? We're not machines, you guys. These terms like efficiency and productivity, they don't resonate with the human experience and with the human need to get back to our core and take our power back and do things like, you know, resting and being creative and having hobbies and being with loved ones. Those are the things that differentiate from us from machines. So we have a couple things going on here, and I think everything that we've talked about, you know, in terms of all of the reasons, expectations and society and multitasking, it really does boil down to poor habits and guilt, right? We feel guilty. How many times, at least for me, I'll actually take out a book and I'll read, and I feel guilty for reading. Why am I feeling guilty for reading? You know, I should be cleaning my house. I should be taking the boys out. But here I am trying to, you know, restore, and I feel guilty for reading. So if there is one thing that I want you guys to take away from today, it's stop feeling guilty and give yourself permission. Give yourself permission to take your power back, to feed into those cues, to rest, relax, and do things that truly restore you. So let's talk a little bit about, sorry, I'll take a pause here. I go to bed at 3 because my brain can't stop, right? I mean, constant activity in our brain. We're always multitasking. There's a million of those tabs open. So we will talk a little bit in a few minutes about some strategies to really quiet your brain and to help just think through one thing at a time and not be so on all the time. So let's talk about self-care, and let's talk about taking your power back through self-care. The definition of self-care is any activity that we deliberately do in order to take care of our mental, our emotional, and our physical health. So I know at first thought when I said this to my husband, he's like, so a trip to Vegas? And I'm like, you know, maybe, you know, depending on who you are. For some people that's self-care. So for some people that's, you know, you end up more broken when you come back. So I think a better way to describe self-care is what self-care is not. So Self-care is not, first of all, resource intensive. So I know a lot of people who say, well, you know what, I can't afford to go on a vacation. I can't afford to have a luxury spa experience. That's not what self-care is. It can be to some people, but it does not require financial, and wealth to take care of yourself. Self-care is not external only. I'm in the beauty business, right? So I love manicures, pedicures. I love to tout, looking good and feeling beautiful. But the reality is, and even true beauty, self-care starts from within. And honestly, that's the hardest work. It's easy to, fix your hair and slap on some makeup, but the hard work is within. So self-care is not just external. Self-care is not selfish. Going back to the guilt stuff, right? Well, I think especially, I would say especially women, I think a lot of us were raised with a notion of we come last. Everybody else, all the kids get served, everything else gets done before it comes back to us. And I'm sure that carries over to a lot of men in this workshop as well. You are not selfish to put yourself first. It's kind of like when you're in the airplane and they say, put your mask on first before you get to other people. There's a reason for that. If you cannot take care of yourself and if you don't feel healthy, you cannot provide for those that you love around you. Self-care is not numbing. So what I mean by that is there are activities that we partake in that can feel good at the moment, right? But when we wake up or, the next couple hours, we don't feel so good. So those are called numbing. And, a lot of numbing, can occur, addictions, drugs, alcohols, workaholic, right? I was a workaholic, and that was a really great way for me to numb everything and not to focus on like, am I really happy right now? It was a great way to put that all aside. So numbing is not self-care. And then finally, self-care is not prescribed. This is something that you really need to create on your own. And it can also change over time. It's not static. It's very fluid, and it's not optional. So this is not a luxury, you guys. Self-care is a requirement for all of us to really feel and be our best. All right, so I would love your feedback. What does self-care look like to you? Or examples of what you do for your own self-care?
This is Trish. It's odd. I literally sleep. That's what I have to do because I don't sleep very good. My brain goes 1,000 miles a minute. I have juggling 1,000 balls and there's always something going on. So my brain just can never shut down. So a lot of times, even though I work weekends too a lot, I will literally, I've found that weekends, if I just sleep, my phone doesn't ring, it just, there's all these things that I can do. My husband tells me I don't shut it off, which I should do as a next step, but sleep seems to, I don't know, it seems to refresh me. I could do anything. I get massages, I do all that, but none of that does anything like just being able to completely shut down and sleep at a time that I'm not needed elsewhere. It just sounds crazy, but
No,
for me.
it's not crazy. No, it's absolutely right on, Trish. And it's actually, I'll share in a minute, but it's one of the top 5 evidence-based ways to take care of yourself, especially when you're feeling overwhelmed. So that's right on. You got to double down on the sleep. I've had some great chats here. Rachel has said time in nature and listening to podcasts on my drive. I love that. I love, love, love that. Annie says getting in the car and driving anywhere. So there's this theme of just kind of getting in the car. I think especially now with with everything being shut down too, there's a sense of freedom of getting in your car and just driving. nobody to talk to, but taking your camera with you. I love that, right? So capturing whatever it is around you that inspires you. Anybody else?
I like to go to the gym.
Yes.
When it just gets overwhelming and I just need to go to the gym, put in my earbuds, some loud music of whatever it is. It can be anything from like 80s, 70s, just something to work through, or a good groove from the 90s. You know,
Yes.
just something to take me away, work hard, burn it off. But you know, and of course, like Trish said, the good sleep also helps. I do the massages and I do all of that kind of stuff as well. But really seems to help me is making sure I'm getting to the gym, and especially on those hard days, working harder at the gym.
Yes, yes.
With the earbuds, but that's the key. It's got to be the earbuds to take me away from everything else.
I can totally relate to that. And it's funny because this morning I was like, you know what? I have this call today and I don't know if I'll have enough time between the gym and prepping and work. But then I was like, no, I have to go because this is what's going to help me get out that stress, right? So exercise is another evidence-based way of decompressing and taking care of yourself. So thank you for that.
I think Jill had some things she was going to.
Hi. Yes. One thing that helped me a lot to kind of get a grip on stopping the cycle was to even give myself 5 to 10 minutes in the morning before I get in the shower, before I get a cup of coffee, to just go either, for me, it was outside on my deck and just get some fresh air and just sit and have a minute of silence. You can, read a little bit if there's, or even journaling, just something to kind of give myself the moment to get a grip on myself and kind of set my mind right before the day begins and everything goes bananas, because it always does. But at least if I can work to put myself in a position to be peaceful and optimistic and successful in my mind before I get going, then it kind of changed the tone for my day. I have the gumption, the attitude, the right mindset to handle things better. So
absolutely. Even that 10 minutes a day, studies have shown, mindfulness and meditation, that just kind of calm stillness really helps, really helps to set your day up and to kind of tame that always on mind.
Yeah.
Right?
And just, I think doing something with an intention, just with intention that you're doing that for yourself. And then those decisions later in the day to read or to, take a nap just feel a little bit easier because you've made that time, for yourself already once today. And the power of what that can give you for energy. Absolutely. And just for mental peace. So.
Absolutely. So good. And we've had Krista here say, take the dog for a walk, and also started doing some circuit training 3 days a week with some friends. That's awesome. And Daniel too. I like to get up. I do the same thing when I get overwhelmed with work. I just, okay, nothing's going to be solved right now. So I've got to get up and just take a walk. And it's true, when you walk away, right? And when you give yourself that space and that time, you can come back feeling refreshed. I always say nobody has their best ideas when they are overwhelmed, stressed, and down to the wire. Nobody has brilliant ideas then, right? It's always when we're in the shower, right? Our best ideas come in the shower, or we've just gone on a lovely walk, or we've had some coffee with friends, and all of a sudden we have a whole new business plan put together, right? So it is really stepping away and going back into yourself that really fuels a lot of that energy and that creativity. When I was in college, I took a couple of art classes, and maybe some of you are enjoy doing art or are artists on the call here, but one of the things that the professor always said is make sure every once in a while you're standing back from your painting or your drawing. And the reason for that is that when you're up close, your perspective is different than when you take a step back. And I think that's really, I think, a good analogy for, kind of everything that we've mentioned here is we've got to take a step back to re-energize and look at the perspective of our lives differently. Daniel called it your creativity break. Exactly. When you go for a walk, it's your creativity break. I love that. So you guys have mentioned, and again, there is no right or wrong way to do self-care as long as it feels good to you, and it can change over time. But these are 5 evidence-based ways of taking care of yourself, specifically during really hard times, which I think we can all say we're in a really tough time right now. The first is exercise. So, you've already nailed it. Exercise really releases those endorphins. And yes, great. It helps us to be, physically fit, but it also helps us from an emotional and a mental standpoint. Gratitude. I think, Jill, you touched on this a little bit, but, seeing the world through a lens of being grateful. All too often, our jobs require us to have very critical thinking and look for flaws, make sure the details are taken care of. And that can sometimes translate to our personal lives, always looking for what's not being done, what needs to be corrected. Instilling a practice of gratitude and really being grateful for those things around you helps to train your brain to see things in a positive light. So according to Lori Santos, which by the way, she is a Yale professor and a psychologist, and she has a podcast called The Happiness Lab, and it is a brilliant podcast. So for those of you on the phone that like podcasts, check out The Happiness Lab. It's quite amazing. So gratitude, sleep. Trish, you talked about sleep. Yes. Getting social. I know sometimes when we feel overwhelmed, we can actually go kind of draw into ourselves. But getting social really allows us to, be vulnerable, laugh, share those emotions that we have. And then finally, being with our emotions. That is allowing our emotions in, recognizing them, and then letting them go through us. So there's a really good poem called The Guest House by a poet called Rumi. And I love this poem because the poem is basically saying that you are like a guest house. And your emotions are knocking at your door. Let them in, sit with them for a while, acknowledge their presence, even if it's things that you don't like, right? Like sadness or anger or guilt. Let them in, sit with them, acknowledge them, and then let them go and pass through. And I thought that was a really great analogy for how we should think about our emotions, because we all know what happens if we suppress them. They come back to haunt us. So let them in and be with them, and then let them go. All right, so I promised you guys a couple of strategies for really guarding and protecting your self-care. And there's a lot of different ways, and as we all practice self-care, we figure out kind of what are our triggers. And these are ones that are very near and dear to me, because these were the ones that I felt like I didn't do a good job of before I had a nervous breakdown on the 405. The first is prioritizing. So I'm sure there's classes out there that we can all take on time management and scheduling better. But really what it all boils down to is what's most important. What can we not drop the ball on today? And let's do those well. There's an Italian proverb that it's in Italian, but I don't speak Italian. So the English translation is, perfect is the enemy of good. So a lot of times, I know I get caught up on making everything perfect. And why? There are some things that need to be really great, and there are some things that we can just let go. Even though I'm a #boy mom, I am so far removed from being one of those Pinterest moms that throw those fabulous birthday parties with like all of the, confetti and the Instagram worthy pictures. I can't do that. And when I first had my kids, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to do this, right? Like there's these expectations. And I'm like, you know what? No, I don't. Costco cake, play in the backyard, get dirty, we're good. Okay. So prioritizing. The second one is setting boundaries. This is a kind of a funny story, but when I lived in Baltimore, I was brand manager working on the CoverGirl brand. Very intense. I was burning the midnight oil, and I was talking to my team and talking about how I didn't particularly like living in Baltimore. And my boss looked me square in the eye and he said, "That's because you don't do anything, Nicole." And I was like, "What?" He's like, "You don't have any friends, you don't go out, you don't do anything." And I was like, first of all, I was angry. I mean, he's my boss. He's the one that's putting all of this work on me. And then as I sat with it for a while, I realized, yeah, I'm not putting any boundaries. So we have this saying that we joked around at the office, but the reward for a pie eating contest is more pie, right? If you've ever seen one of those shows where those food competitions where they eat as many hot dogs as they can, or they eat as much pie as they can, the faster they eat, the more pie and the more hot dogs they get. So I was doing a great job at work and my boss kept giving more work and I didn't say no. So it's up to us to say no. Bring your whole self to work. There's probably a whole nother hour we can do on bringing your whole self to work, but it's really leading with compassion. It's, you know, as an employee, as a leader in your organization, really understanding that there are times where you're going to lean into work and there's going to be times where you need to lean into yourself and to your family. And those conversations are so important. So as a leader, you can help manage your team's career. And as an employee, you can express your needs to be an effective worker so that the company can retain you longer. So there's a lot of work out there by Sheryl Sandberg, by Brene Brown, and it all is really kind of being vulnerable and bringing your whole self to work. And then finally, being present, taming your monkey mind. So the monkey mind is a concept rooted in Buddhism, where it is doing one thing at a time. So what I mean by this is, you know, a lot of us are at work and we're like, oh, I can't wait to get to happy hour, back when we used to go to happy hours. And then we're at happy hour and we're like, man, I feel guilty because I have so much work that I need to do. And then we go home and we are, you know, with our kids and we're thinking about how much stuff needs to be done around the house. And then we, you know, put our kids to bed and we are still thinking about, you know, all of these things that we need to do. We're never truly, truly present. So the monkey mind is really focusing and getting the most out of what you're doing right now. They say, when you eat, eat. When you walk, walk. When you are having a conversation, have the conversation. So it really, truly is being present and getting the most out of that activity that you're doing right now. All right, so I've gone through a lot here, and like I said, I could probably go in deep to each of these quadrants. What kind of questions do you guys have so far, or comments? I love that. Trish says you need to come back and present on bringing your health self to work. I love it. Yes, absolutely. All right, well, I am going to share with you guys another story about my journey, because I kind of dropped you off at the part of the 405 when I was having a nervous breakdown. And I dove into self-care and I started learning a lot about, you know, mindfulness and meditation and just really, you know, how to pause and not be a workaholic and be a perfectionist. About a year after I started having my panic attacks, my husband and I took some time out together, and we decided that we wanted to move home to Iowa. We'd been away for probably about 10 years. And it was that time in our life with 2 young kids that a slower pace of life is really what we needed. My husband got a great gig, and my company allowed me to work from home. So it really felt like all of the stars had aligned and it was meant to be. But when we moved home, it was really looked anything but like a happy ever ending. When we moved home in 2016, within a span of 18 months, my mother-in-law passed away unexpectedly from an accident. She wasn't sick. It was very unexpected. My sister, who is near and dear to me, she started getting ill, and my husband and I took in my 2 teenage nephews into our home under emergency guardianship. A couple months later, my sister passed away. She was only 35 years at the time. My husband, at the end of 2017, the job that actually brought us here went bankrupt, and all of its employees go with a half-hour notice. I put this picture on here because it felt like a tornado had just came into my life and picked everything up and spewed all of the pieces everywhere. I had come home to, try to have this calmer life, and all of a sudden we were the core of our family, integrating our nephews, going through anger and guilt and everything that can be associated with death and trauma for my 2 teenagers. And self-care went out the window. It was like everything that I had learned just, and I went through this tunnel of grief for a long time. I grieved over, my loved ones. I grieved over my lost life and what life was going to look like now. But slowly, as I was in that tunnel, I started remembering some of the things that I learned, taking time out for myself. I actually took a different role in my company, a step down from a director role into a role that would give me more work-life balance so that I could figure out how to be a boy, mom, aunt of 4. And I started asking for a lot of help. Anybody that could help me, I asked for help. And this was very new to me. It was not something that I was used to doing. I was the type of person that I can do it all. But I asked for a lot of help, and I was vulnerable. I showed my true self both at work and at home. And I also started a practice of gratitude. For me, I'm not very good at journaling. That's just not my thing. But what I like to do is I like to capture moments that I'm grateful for and like literally burn them into my memory. If it's, the kids playing together or a beautiful sunset, just closing my eyes, inhaling that image and exhaling and burning it to my memory. So I say all this and I share my story with you today because life can be hard, right? And we're all going through the ups and the downs of life right now, especially during COVID. But self-care is the core. It's our compass, it's our recharging unit, and it's what we have to get back to be able to then move forward and be our best and give our best. So with that, you guys, it's about 3 minutes till, and I have just 5 things that I want to leave you with. In addition to, remember, we're not machines, okay? No more guilt. Give yourself permission and know that self-care is a priority. It is your guiding compass in life. It's your power, just like the battery on your phone, it is your power. It's a constant quest. And self-care is self-love.
Oh.
Any questions? Any comments?
I was just going to say, it's interesting that you say one of the things that I've done more often, because while I certainly am getting out there a lot more now compared to even a couple months ago, because people are more comfortable meeting in person, not necessarily events, but they're comfortable at least meeting in person, and that's fine. But one thing that I've noticed is that I actually take that break and have a lunch. So much of my, day, I run from, 7 in the morning from a morning event to an evening event, and then you have a lunch event and you don't take a lunch. So I've never really eaten lunch. Still haven't gotten to the point where I'm eating lunch all the time, but at least I take that break. So it'll be interesting to see how that transitions back when we are more to the in-person events, because
Absolutely.
But I've aged like 50 years since COVID hit, so I've got dark circles. It's like all of us, we feel that way. I mean, it's just the way that there's just such a heaviness out there. Yeah.
Absolutely. There definitely is. And, I hope that some of those helped in terms of, giving yourself that space, and mindfulness and, meditation or those nature walks really do go a long ways in just, shaking that off, so I'm glad that you're taking those lunches, and I hope that you keep that up.
Me too.
Well, Nicole, thank you so much for presenting today. This has been a wonderful topic. There's been a lot of chat that's been going on, and I just want to share too, Rachel and Annie have both said in chat in the last couple of seconds here, thank you so much for your vulnerability, sharing your experience and what you've been, how you've been able to come out of that. So inspiring to the rest of us, and it's a great challenge to the rest of us to try to do the same thing. So thank you so much. This has been wonderful. So I'd like to see in the chat, everyone, go ahead and put a number in the chat. What do you think of Nicole's presentation today? And let's give her some today as we start to head out. And also want to let you know about some other upcoming events. Oh, there's a 10 plus on a scale of 5. Okay.
You guys are the best. No, seriously, it's been such a pleasure to be here today, and I appreciate you guys all tuning in and really giving so much attention to the topic and so much engagement.
This has been wonderful. So do take a look at the chamber event calendar coming up. We've got 2 more Feed Your Mind scheduled in November. Those topics look great. Don't forget Caffeinate and Conversate every Tuesday morning. We've got some other regular events too to pop into. So take a look at those. And thank you everyone for participating today, being present. This has been a great conversation. So
absolutely.
We'll see you next
time.
time.
Everybody.
And thanks again to Mediacom for sponsoring.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.